Hello fellow people. So, Deltarune, the game of all time, what the hell? With chapters 3 and 4 being so packed with literally everything you could ever want and more. To the point that even I, who doesn't really do the whole theory stuff, had so many thoughts that I just have to share for my own sanity. I wrote down some of my thoughts, but they just kept coming. And I could have just kept putting them on Tumblr, but then I remembered that, oh yeah, I have a channel, right? So here we are, and here's my biggest theory that came out of this hyperfixation, which, I'm not a theory person, I'm more of a storyteller, so I'm sorry Under Delta fans, this might be structured kinda differently from how y'all are used to receiving your stuff, but that's enough stalling, let's go. Major spoilers for chapters 3 and 4 of Deltarune, as well as their secret routes and branches. In chapter 4 we get to learn of the prophecy Ralsei told us in the very beginning in a lot more detail, and we also offhandedly learn a very important detail for the lore of this world. This specific prophecy is the religion of this monster town. Put a pin in it. Because it's broken up into chunks all over the multiple dark worlds in the random order with random repetitions, let us see the full prophecy altogether first before doing anything with it. I managed to separate it into 3 distinct chunks, the first being basically the same thing Ralsei told us in the beginning, the second being random bullshit go, and third is the mysterious ending. Let's see. The prophecy which whispers amongst the shadows, the legend of this world, Deltarune. A world bask in purest light, beneath it grew eternal night. The light and dark both burning dire, a countdown to the years expire. If fountains breathe their roaring cries, and titan shape from darkened eyes. But lo, on hopes and dreams they sent 3 heroes at the world's end. The third hero, the prince, alone in deepest dark. The first hero, the cage with human soul and parts. And last was the girl, at last was the girl. The second hero, the girl with hope grows on a heart. Next part is the random predictions. Love finds its way to the girl, Joggington grows the beard. The pointy-headed will say toothpaste and then boy. The queen's chariot cannot be stopped. The lord of screens cleave thread by blade. Axe carved by the tortoise's grand hammer. Cold water fell from the top of the sky. The flower man trapped in asylum. The angel, banished, will finally meet its desire. And the ending. The last prophecy, the story's end. They'll hear the ring of heaven's call. They'll see the tale of hell take roll. The night which makes with blackened knife shall duel with heroes strife by strife. And then, when all hope is lost for the tale, the final tragedy unveils. To save the world, there's only one way. I think only if you played with your eyes closed, you didn't notice that something is off here. The blatant foreshadowing that the girl in the prophecy is not Susie. The whole thing about her not fitting in anywhere and never being picked, the glass Merrill showing a sword instead of an axe, Ralsei telling us that by his meta-knowledge, the girl should be able to wear ribbons when Susie is literally the only party member who absolutely refuses to equip any ribbon armor. It's not Susie in the prophecy. She wasn't supposed to be here. But if she's not, then who? It was supposed to be Noelle. That's why Snowgrave Root is focused on Noelle getting stronger and the fucked up connection with the soul, not Chris, who's only ever mentioned as the cage to hold the soul. That's why Dreamers adopted Chris, they needed a human to become a cage for the soul. That's why Carol said Chris is always welcome with a red soul font. That's why Chris and Noelle grew up together, they were supposed to stay together. That's why Snowgrave forces them back together into an allegory for an enraged and abusive relationship that ignores their identities and forces them into set prophesized boxes. That's why Carol is so pissed at Susie being in her house. She ruined the prophecy by stealing Noelle's role. That's why Chris adores Susie so much. She wasn't supposed to be here. She ruined the set in stone and glass story, and that means they have hope to break out of their cage role too. To save the world, there's only one way. Susie has to give back her role to Noelle, probably by removing herself from the story. Wow, son, that was a lot of sentences you just threw out there like it's nothing. Let's go through each point now one by one. Susie wasn't supposed to be here, in town in general. We learned in chapter 3 that she moved around a lot before settling down here, and even then, her house is the only one we haven't seen in the whole town, though we can speculate. So far, the only thing we have is a shot of her very crashed, very empty bedroom. Yikes. She's an outcast who doesn't fit in, that's her entire thing. She's someone who came in from nowhere into a town where everyone knows everyone, where everyone has their roles and everyone follows the set rules. The roles and rules she doesn't give a shit about, and that's why Chris absolutely adores her. Let's talk about Chris for a moment. Isn't it interesting how the only mention they get is as the cage with human soul and parts? What does that description and depiction tell us about Chris? Well, nothing. And that's the point. Chris doesn't matter. To the prophecy, they don't exist. They're just a vessel to hold the soul in. Kinda like what we were creating in the beginning of the game. It could have been any human in their place. But wait a minute. Chris is the only human around. Think about the implications for a second. This town is highly religious. And Dreamers especially so. They know the prophecy, at least the most important parts. They worship the prophecy. And they know that it specifically mentions a human soul and a human body. Chris was adopted by dreamers when they were very young. Did they adopt Chris because of the prophecy, which mentions a human being needed for it to come true, so they took in the only one they found around? Wait, that could have been weird back there. Just to be clear, I'm not implying Toriel and Asgore are some evil zealot masterminds that murdered Chris's human parents to fulfill the prophecy, which is a theory in itself if you want to consider it, be my guest. But the questions remain. Where did Chris come from? Why are they the only human in this town of monsters? How did they even get here? I'm pretty sure the answer to what happened after those is very simple though. Toriel just saw a lost child and took it in like we know she did with Susie. And only realizing it's a human with no other humans around, maybe a thought did cross one of their minds. So they adopted Chris and introduced him to Noelle. Isn't it interesting that Chris already knew how to rip out the soul even though we only infiltrated them in chapter 1? Noelle said when they were little, Chris would pretend to rip out their heart and chase her with it to scare her. Was Chris taught to do that? Rip out their soul to have it move when needed? Like, to seal the fountains as prophesized? I'm just throwing stuff out there, there's so much we need to know about them still. But that piece of lore is fascinating in the implications. Now, Noelle, our supposed hero whose role was stolen by her own crush. Noelle is raised in a very strict environment. It feels like Carol is obsessed with perfection and control. And what's more perfect than to have your own daughter become the hero from a legend? Everyone wishes to be one of the heroes. According to Caddy, it can be any one of us. So why shouldn't it be Noelle? So Noelle was raised as a perfect angel, perfect student, perfect potential hero. Raised alone with Chris, again, the only human in town, by definition the one to fulfill the role of the cage. Spending all the time together at Noelle's house, always welcome. Hell, these two are the ones who played with all the toys and tools that now became darkness we meet, unintentionally preparing the stage for their own future. But this friendship is a forced one. Noelle mentions that she was only hanging out with Chris because they're neighbors. One can even read an implication that she never really saw them as a friend, just someone she has to spend time with. I think Carol intentionally kept them together, hoping the proximity to Chris would automatically mean Noelle would become the girl. Since they're definitely the first hero, if Noelle is always close by, when Chris finds their destiny, Noelle will surely be right there with them. So Carol insisted on them staying together, raising Noelle to be obedient, perfect to command when time comes to fulfill the prophecy. Oh, no wait, that starts sounding very similar to something else, like a controlling mother raising her daughter to be an obedient wife. So, do you know the Snowgrave arranged marriage allegory theory? I'll explain it as best as I can, but remember, it's just an allegory. It's not what's actually happening. God fucking damn it, some people take things and run with them. In Snowgrave, or, well, Weirdroot, Chris not mattering is clearer than ever. It's all about the player. And it's all about creating the storyline, any deviation from which will ruin the story entirely, kick you back into the broken path where Noelle's role is stolen by Susie. First, you force our sorta explicitly non-binary Chris into what's usually seen as a stereotypical male role, commanding, aggressive, taking charge, making all decisions, pushing meek obedient Noelle around and explaining it as getting her stronger. Then you get her 2 rings. A ring with a snow globe forced onto her despite her not wanting to take it, like an engagement ring with one of those decorational fancy gemstones. And after, a thorn ring, thorns digging into her finger, she can't take it off, like wedding bands aren't supposed to be taken off. And now she's perfectly obedient. A good little wife. Our lesbian friend forced into a relationship with what player deemed to be a male. This is the part where I say, if I see anyone saying the shit that Chris's pronouns are whatever you choose them to be, and during Pride Month of all times, oh fuck right off, you transphobic shithead. Chris uses they them for a fucking reason, deal with it, asshole. And then, if you choose to ignore Chris's agency again, like you ignore their identity. And then, if you choose to ignore Chris's agency again while they and Noelle are talking in chapter 4, if you ignore everything Chris tried to do to prevent this shit from happening, you force Noelle to get back into this relationship, force the ring back onto her, and now she can't escape, trapped in your spiderweb. The only thing she can do is go along with it, thanking you for making her stronger, because you, the player, hold all the power here. And now she knows for a fact, it's not Chris. Chris doesn't exist in this scenario. It's you. And this is also the part where I mentioned that something got patched out literally on day 1 because people took the allegory too far into oh my god, it actually happened territory. You know, the flower withering little animation, which could be interpreted in several ways. I will not discuss that one further because, I mean, the allegory was obvious and some people already stink about it. You'll get along great with Carol, I see. It got replaced by this shattering spiderweb-like effect now, with the message of player taking full control over her becoming clearer and without room to be misinterpreted as something else actually happening, which it never did. It's called an allegory for a fucking reason. Well, and there's something else that fits into this allegory. Carol insisting that Chris, or a lot more importantly, you, are always welcome here. Guess who arranged this marriage? Guess who wants Noelle to be the hero and the legend and arranged for her to always be near the confirmed other half of the storyline, even if they grew apart with time? This one do. Note the way she specifically says you, all red, the soul color. She knows about the soul, whether she's the knight or just a red herring for it. She knows. And she doesn't give a shit about the one carrying that soul. One might even think that she tried to lure Chris into her house to hang out with Noelle by having a piano here. Maybe collecting all those red heart pillows is also tied to that. Noelle did say Carol likes red heart-shaped objects. If I were to speculate, I can see her drilling into Chris that they don't matter, they're just a vessel for something grand. And with time, they started to believe her, just going through motions after Azriel left, waiting for their destiny. But then, Susie, who can't be controlled, who doesn't give a shit about rules or roles, who will do what she wants no matter what you tell her, you the player included. And Chris, who so far has only been the outcast, with the only purpose laid out for them as letting some entity possess them for the greater good. Oh, they love her! Note how with every chapter Chris gets less and less controllable. And I don't mean just ripping the soul out, I mean the things they do while we're in control. Their expressions, the way they say things when we tell them to, when and how they refuse to do actions or move on their own. It increases each chapter. In chapter 1 they didn't show anything besides some rare flavor text about their actual feelings on talking to someone, until they jump in by themselves to protect Susie. And now in just a couple of days of hanging out with her, they refuse to speak when you tell them to, even biting their hand if they don't like what you picked, refuse to do actions you direct, and that's on top of ripping the soul out several times in a day, kicking it around all they want, locking it up and fucking off to play piano for 8 minutes while you're just floating around like an idiot. Because they realized, yeah, they may need the soul to stay alive, sure, but you can't do shit without them. And one scene comes to mind especially, where you don't even get the privilege of seeing it, making it more private. Their talk with Susie in the diner. They just sit there watching her and smiling. They adore Susie so much. Because she is herself, because she can't be controlled, because she's breaking the rules of what this destiny is supposed to be. And seeing her doing this gives them hope that maybe they could find a way to cut off their strings too and join her in this freedom. Speaking of roles and the players speak for them, I would like to bring up something interesting I noticed about the characters' names, specifically the ones for our main people. You see, most of the character names in the series are puns or very on the nose for what they are and what their gimmick is. Except for some, which have some fascinating meanings in the context of the prophecy. Everyone is always trying to find some meaning in the anagrams, switching letters around to get some answer, but how about looking at the names themselves as is? First, I would like to ask you, do you think Chris had their name before they were adopted, or were they named by Terrell and Asgore? Why am I asking? Because Chris in every spelling and every extended version means the same thing. Bearer of Christ. In the prophecy, they are the cage, bearing a projection of us, the God of this world. Well, a coincidence surely. What about Ralsei? Oh yeah, his name doesn't have a meaning besides being an anagram for Azriel, but Azriel does have a meaning. God be my help. And if we switch around the words, like we switch around the letters to get Ralsei's name, the meaning for it becomes God's helper. And what is Ralsei's purpose in the game? Oh yeah, he's the exposition, the healer, the one you're making do stuff, who takes pride in being useful and thinks it's his only purpose. Our good little helper. God's helper. You think that's where religious parallels end? Oh no, we still have Noelle, whose name means Christmas. On brand with her entire family, yes, gimmicky, but what is Christmas? It's the day Christ was born. Her name fits in perfectly with our other heroes, the one bearing us and the one helping us. Then what about Susie? Surely her name also fits in the lineup. Susie in every spelling and extension simply means lily, like the flower. Lilies in flower language mean purity, innocence, joy, and rebirth. On first glance, what the hell do these things have to do with our Susie? They kinda seem like the opposites of what she is. But think about it. She's the only one that can't be controlled by the player. She's pure, untainted by our influence. She finds joy and passion in being herself and hanging out with her new friends. Her entire switch in attitude in chapter 1 can be read as a rebirth of sorts. In some interpretations, lilies also mean hope, new beginnings, and personal growth. All things we see her get in chapter 4. Oh, also, in several cultures, lilies are a symbol of death. It's a funeral flower, used for mourning and remembrance. What would have happened if Susie never moved here? Or, at the very least, if she didn't show up on the day the project were assigned? Chris would have joined the study group with Noelle and Burley. It was the only possible option. The option that got removed entirely the moment Susie came in. If she didn't show up, the story would have started with Chris, Noelle, and Burley exploring the dark world together instead. Wait, but there are only supposed to be 2 heroes of light. Oh. Burley was always going to be the first sacrifice, wasn't he? Remember the minigames you have to do to get Shadow Mantle? Then I made a game for us to play, which is a redacted and overwritten version of an old original Chris used to play when they were a kid. The one where Noelle encountered an Ice Palace maze glitch, the maze only she could walk through. it's Dragon Blazers. We even get a little confirmation of it, with Chris's description changing after you first play the original game. We learn in Chapter 4 that Dragon Blazers was based on Lord of the Hammer, and the book series was based on the prophecy itself. The game we play, the original game we play, is based on an adaptation of the prophecy. So what do we do in this game? The Forbidden Path began with ice magic. You push around the white cloak and force it to freeze enemies to proceed. You freeze the bluebird. She was used up. You get the key to the shelter. On the next level to proceed, you kill the sprites of Susie and Ralsei. Deltarune will only have one ending. It will all come back to Snowgrave no matter what you do. That's why its events are showcased in the games no matter if you did the root or not in your save file. Deltarune the Prophecy, the simulated game in which we're playing, will only have one ending. If the prophecy was followed as it was intended from the beginning, we would have had us and Chris's body, Noelle and Ralsei getting stronger by getting rid of the enemies. You would still need to get the call to the shelter. And then, to save the world, you would sacrifice Noelle and Ralsei, who will immediately comply with your orders. But Susie came into town, and everything changed. Susie was never supposed to be here. The prophecy never accounted for her. So when she forced her way into the story, literally kicking down the door into it, she broke the intended pattern. Now, instead of Chris joining Noelle and Burley, they're assigned to the project with Susie. Because Susie ate the chalk, they have to go together to get some for the class. When the door opened and the darkness met them in there, Chris stepped back. Chris surely knows about the prophecy. They know they're supposed to go there and that it would jump kick the events of the story. That's why the soul infiltrated them today. But they were practically told their whole life it's supposed to be Noelle with them here. Instead, Susie dares them to come in. Susie is the one who falls into the dark world with them. Susie is the one who became the second hero. And she doesn't care about her destiny, she dismisses it entirely. Which shocks Ralsei. This isn't what he was expecting. He also was waiting for a girl who's going to follow the leader, wear ribbons and just do what she's told. And that's not Susie. The only thing she matches from the full prophecy is that she wants to kill everything in her path. But unprompted. Ralsei sees this change and sees an opportunity. If this part of the prophecy changed, maybe the ending can be changed too. Their fate, both his and Susie's. So he tries his best to convince the player not to fight. That acting is a much better way to go about things, just trust him. He sees Susie still on the path of destruction and tries to force her to behave too. After all, the girl follows what the hero tells her. But not Susie. She doesn't give a shit. Chris can tell her to jump off the cliff. Oh wait, she'll actually find that fun. You get the point. And Chris gets the point. They see how free she is. They feel how the player controlling them has no hold over her, unlike Ralsei. They don't mind that she started acting. It was her decision based on her own experiences, not what someone told her to do. And they like that a lot. Her free spirit even broke the rules of the game itself. She made herself and Ralsei learn acting on their own. And she's breaking the narrative immersion for the player too, by constantly acknowledging Chris themselves, reminding that Chris is not just a self-insert vessel, that they're a person, they're her friend. She pushes past when Ralsei tries to minimize things and keep it moving for the player. She's concerned about Chris themselves in that moment. She acknowledges Ralsei too, forcing him to grow past being just a toy whose purpose is only to be sacrificed in the end. And Ralsei realizes something. Not that she's not the one, he seemingly doesn't have a clue on that judging from his dialogue, but that Susie has no idea how the prophecy ends. She's not just keeping it secret for the player like he does. She genuinely doesn't know that both her and him are supposed to die in the end, and he would like to keep it that way, hoping that maybe the story will change if she continues being herself, breaking the rules, making Chris act out against the player too, which I'm guessing is the thing Ralsei talked about with Chris while sending the player off to follow Susie for a bit. Susie's presence alone broke the narrative. Noelle was supposed to be the other hero, and she and Ralsei were supposed to be sacrifices for the prophecy. Susie took her place, and her fate. Ralsei tried to change the prophecy by influencing the player in Chris's cage of a body, but even with all these changes, with Ralsei meddling and Susie not being able to be manipulated by the player unlike the girl in the prophecy, the ending doesn't change. There's still only one ending to Deltarune. Once you'll get the full code to the door, they would have to be sacrificed in order to open the shelter. Look at Chris when you're playing the minigame. When you stop 8-bit Susie and Ralsei, they flinch and turn to look back at you. After you get the Shadow Mantle, when Susie comes in to look for them, you still have control over 8-bit Chris. You can come up behind Susie and try to stop her. And Chris freaks the fuck out, pulling her away from the sprite and even hyperventilating a bit. They know the prophecy. And even if you can argue they didn't before, they did see it before Susie smashed it. They had a clear view of it from the side. We did not. They also just saw what needs to be done for it to come true, through the events of the game based on the books based on the prophecy. And they do not want you to follow through on it. But it's not up to them. And it's not even up to us, not really. You can try to act as nicely as possible. Or you can force correct the story into what it was supposed to be, forcing Noelle back into her role from the side, even if the story would get darker than it was supposed to be. It's too late. Susie and Ralsei are dying either way. You want to see what's in the real shelter after all, right? I keep saying that Susie wasn't supposed to be here, And yeah, we have the backstory that she moved around a lot when she was a kid. But what if, for a little extra theory at the end, we took it a step further into the meta-narrative? I already mentioned that Deltarune, the game we're playing, is a simulation made to play out the events of the prophecy of Deltarune. We are the god that's supposed to play this thing out. We are the angel that's supposed to be vanished by the end of the story. There's actually a very interesting theory on that from my bestie Scully. I'll link it in the description. This simulation was made for us, so we can fulfill the prophecy by using the placings given to us. We make a vessel, but wait, that's not necessary. We already have one prepared for us in advance. Sure, it already has a name, but that's just a little hiccup, can't be overlooked. We still control its reaction. Oh, sorry, their reaction. Forgot we're a human person in this story for a second, it's hard being a god. Now we just have to play the game, kill some enemies, level up, open up new stuff, the usual. Oh, wait, what do you mean my choices don't matter? Why the hell can't I control you? Not even in battle? The hell kind of RPG is this where your team members do what they want and you have to clean up their mess? And why is my vessel not moving on its own? I didn't tell you to do that, did I? You see how fun this is? Even putting aside the whole vessel fake out, which people already made enough theories on, the game fails at being your expected RPG the moment Susie kicks down the door. So why did the meta creator of the game even put her into it if all she does is break it? Well, perhaps they're trying to break the game on purpose. Maybe they want to find another ending too, to prevent these events from happening in their world, their real world. I'm pretty sure anyone watching Deltarune theories already knows this, but Susie specifically was foreshadowed early in Undertale. One of the Gaster followers, the Clam Girl, mentions her, even though her name is spelled differently. And a month before Deltarune released, her dialogue was changed to reflect that you'll be meeting Susie very soon. We all have our jokes and theories about Sunset Papyrus moving universes, but what about Susie? What if she was originally from Undertale universe, and some force, probably Gaster considering it's one of his followers that tells us about her, plucked her up from there and moved her to the monster town of Deltarune? She doesn't fit in anywhere here, because she wasn't supposed to exist in this world. Her presence breaks this perfect little world made for us to play out the prophecy. And perhaps her presence might change the future too. I know, I just said that the prophecy didn't change. She and Ralphie still have to die if you believe the connection I made with the Dragon Blazes minigame. But you know what also didn't change? The visual of the girl, her description that still fits Noelle a lot better, even though it's Susie who's been going down her path. It didn't update when she barged into the story. So who's to say the fate didn't change? It's just the prophecy that's outdated. And here we are. Somehow I took a couple lines of a theory I had and stretched it out into a whole video with my ramblings and extra theories, and somehow I managed to find a happy ending version too. So it's actually multiple theories for y'all to consider in one place. Once I realized the connection chain of game to books to prophecy, it all connected in my mind. Why there's only one ending despite weird root being a thing and clearly changing a lot of things in dynamics. And it's also interesting to examine how we and our actions influence the world of the story. Like the stuff Chris does when we are in between chapters. Honestly, chapter 4 is so good, I have no idea how it can be followed up. But I'm sure Mr. Tobias Fox will cook up something in event gaming once again. So to wrap this up, what are your thoughts on these theories? Did I miss something glaring that ruins my narrative completely? Or are there things I missed that actually support my ideas? And what's your favorite moment in Deltarune so far? Mine, bar none, is Chris playing the piano by themselves in the church dark world. Chills, literal chills. Chris deserves a long good rest after we finally leave them alone. And with that, I'll leave you to think on this. I'll also make a video detailing my theory on what item Ralsei is soon, so I guess be on the lookout for it, and I'll see you on the other side.